All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I trust we are good. It's going to be an interesting session for the next 30 minutes. So, we're live on Facebook as well as YouTube. Whichever one you're watching from, you could put your comment section there. It's going to be an interesting moment. I hope I can be heard very clearly. So, if you're live and you can hear me very clearly, put it out in the comment section to say you could hear me. So today we're going to have a fantastic discussion that keeps building upon. Last time we are talking about why you need to pursue academic excellence. We're talking about the motivation for academic excellence. That's what we talked about last week. Today we are taking this even onto another level, right? And these topics are all building up. We're going somewhere with it, so make sure you're following correctly. Today we want to talk about, maybe this topic is supposed to precede the other, I don't know, but they are all foundational. Before we start talking about the hows, we're talking about the whys. We're dealing with motivations before we start talking about methods, how to read, how to study, how to prepare, how to do things. Let's understand why we do it first of all. When we understand why, it's easier to sustain the course of how, right? So there's methodology and then there's motivation. So motivation is more paramount. If you have all the methods and the the way to do something and you don't know why you're doing it, you could stop abruptly. You could be demotivated to continue the course of action. So if you could hear me put it live, that I can be heard very clearly, I can be seen very clearly. By the grace of God, the internet is going to favor us today. So, right on to our discussion today, which is understanding the real meaning and the essence of education. Understanding the real meaning and essence of education. Is that not interesting? That sounds interesting to me. It sounds interesting to me. So, I'd love to know what comes to your mind when you hear the word education. What comes to mind when you hear education? For most people, it's school, and we'll talk about that as we go further. Why very critical? Please put MTN. I'm scared of Airtel, man. So it's clear on YouTube, isn't it? I can't see any comments. Not yet. Not yet clear. Is it breaking? Is it not still clear on YouTube? Right, on YouTube now. Put the feedback on the comment section so that I will know we have 25 more minutes or 23 more minutes. Is it clear or not clear? It's clear now. Is it clear now? Wow, wow. It's showing clear on Facebook. Just you're using a router, make it better. Like try to refresh your browser and then let's see if it's because it's looking all good here. But then if I don't get feedback that it's good on the comment, I cannot really know. No feedback on the comment that is good. Still hanging. Still loading. Like someone is saying it's breaking. So is it clear now on YouTube? It's clear now on YouTube. Okay, so let's try the Airtel network and see the sharp one. All right, guys. So it's the network. We're trying to get these things done. So master the one that works and stick to it. We'll master the one that works and fit. Let's fit. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, we are having more views on the YouTube and Facebook is live as well. Okay, so so see whichever one that works. It's clear. So it's clear. So we are good to go now. So what comes to your mind when you hear the word education? For some persons, school. Apart from school, what else comes to mind when you say education? What else comes to mind? Put it in the comment section and then let me narrate this. Let me give this narrative so that we could brainstorm together and know what the issue is like. So every year, couple of African youths desire to have a better way in life, desire to have their lives better, desire to do better with their lives, to, forge ahead with their lives. And so, a couple of millions of those Nigerian youths pick up the idea and say that somehow they are going to go get their life better through education. And by that, they mean through going to school. And so 1.6 out of the other millions who apply through the normal JAM or Joint Admission Matriculation Board processes, 1.6 million of those people are being admitted into various tertiary education within the nation, private, public, polytechnic, universities. And out of these millions admitted every year also, of course, 4 years after, over 400,000 of those millions that were admitted are released as graduates every year. This is an estimate statistics. And then 90% of those 400,000 that are chunked out of these various public, private, tertiary institutions within the nation, 90% of them are not able to find something to do or are not employed after 4 or 5 years in school. 90%. The few of the 10% who get to find jobs cannot even meaningfully contribute to the growth of the organization in which they find themselves. Most of them find themselves needed to be retrained all over by that organization after being employed. The rest who are not employed cannot find anything to engage themselves with. So why is that? How come? How do you explain this kind of scenario? How come that these innocent people, seemingly positive-minded people, they desired good, and then they decided that they're going to get this good through the route of education? How come that they made their way, got everything, stayed through, went through the 4 years and came out 5 years, some 6 years, and they are almost still not able to make their life work? How come? What is the issue? What is the issue? If you have an idea, you may want to put it in the comment section. And then when you come to the school setting, you see issues like um, alarming rate of examination malpractice. You see issues like high rate of plagiarism among indigenous students, sex for grades, incompetency of graduates in their discipline. We have already talked about the issue of unemployability, not just unemployment. People who are employed but cannot contribute meaningfully to the organization. We have issues like that. So I'm looking up and down because I'm streaming to Facebook too with my other device while I'm talking to the YouTube people. So these are the issues you find when you come to school too. Why are all these issues? What's the cause? Why are things like this out there in the school, out there for the school leavers? Why is this reality like this? This is the crux and the essence of this discussion. This is the crux and the essence of this discussion. So, having raised this point, allow me to propose that I think that why such number of persons will come through the system, go out of the system, and still not be able to make their way work is because both they themselves and the people who run the system have lack of understanding of what education really is. Every malpractice, every misnomer in our educational system can be traced right back to the lack of understanding or the ignorance of what the true meaning and essence of education is. All this that we have highlighted and pointed out is thanks to the fact that most people in the educational sphere, the educational terrain, lack absolutely an understanding of what education is and what the essence of education is. So it's very pertinent that we talk about this subject. Have you seen why the subject is very important? It concerns you, the school goer, you, the school leaver, you, the organization holder, you, the job seeker, you, the unemployed. It concerns every one of us. It's a very, very critical subject. Very, very critical. So, in the remaining 10 minutes or so that we have, we'll talk about what education is not, what it is, and possibly the way forward um, based on the situation that we find ourselves in our educational terrain. So, let's talk about what education is not. Let's talk about what education is not. Remember, I asked the question that if you hear the word education, somebody says intellectual improvement. Oh, that's fantastic. So before I tell you what I think it is, let us talk about what it is not, and then how we could remedy the educational situation the way we have it in our nation. The first thing that education is not is that education is not schooling. Education does not equals schooling. A person could go to and through school and still not be educated. It's very, very possible because education is not schooling. Schooling has to do with a particular place, where education, or one of the places where education is supposed to be attained or acquired. Unfortunately, you could literally go to school and still not be educated. So, schooling is not one and the same with education. That's why whenever somebody raises the word education and you mistaken your in your brain to mean school, that is not absolutely correct. Education also does not equal certification. David Warbo, so good to have you here, David, my very good friend. So education also does not equal certification. This is very, very critical right here because we have the certificate craze. This is not a certified statistics, but I can tell you, being in the educational sector myself, that most people who go to and through the university these days are just doing that for the certificate. I mentioned that last week. A mentee of mine was talking to a fresh student who was giving up a kind of crazy attitude to learning, and they were like, "For me, I just want a certificate." So, education does not equal certification. A person could be certified in anything, but not educated in that thing. Very, very critical. Very, very critical. Education does not equal certification. Another thing that education is not is that education does not mean examination. That you take an exam or an exam is involved does not mean that that gives education. A person could take an exam, even pass an exam, and still miss being educated in that subject matter. What else education is not? Education is not graduation. Education is not graduation. So you could go through any course of training, you could go through any course of learning and have graduation ceremony. But that does not guarantee that you have got an education. Education does not always equal graduation. These are some of the things that education is not. Someone said education is refers to intellectual improvement. That is greatly, greatly, greatly true. So these are the things that education is not. So what is education, and then how do we take remedy of the educational situation that we find ourselves as a nation and then as individuals? That's where we're going to wrap up. There are two ways I can categorize what education is. As an educationist myself, having spent um, maybe 6 years studying education, I did my first degree in education, did my master's as well in education, so I can tell you from the academic point of view and then from the real life point of view what the concept of education is. So, education, of course, is from the root word, it's a Latin root word, educare. It means to draw out or to develop from within, to lead out what is inside, basically referring to the potentials of a person. That's the roots for it. But what's the meaning? I mean, the applicational meaning of education and what's the essence of it? There are two ways we could perceive and see education. The first is education as a process. Education as a process. And then the second way is education as a product. So if you want to say education as a process, we would see it as that process of developing, very key word, the process of developing required, desired mindset, attitude, skill set, character traits in order to efficiently perform roles and thereby be valuable to yourself and to a group of people or an organization. That may look long, but then that's a comprehensive definition of the concept of education in application. So by books, academically, we could say, oh, it's from the root word. Educare, to draw out, to lead out from within. It refers to the potentials of a person, what a person could be, what a person could do. So that process of developing that which a person could be or do, such that you're able to develop a mindset in a person, an attitude in a person, a skill, a character traits or quality in a person, such that the person is able to perform. Very critical. The person is able to perform relevant roles, and so he's able to provide value to an organization because he could perform roles thanks to the development. So any and every process through which a person passes through to develop some required, some desired mindset, attitude, skill set, and character in himself is education as a process. It could be reading, it could be through mentorship, it could be through training, it could be through volunteering, it could be through going through school, through practice, through any means. But what once it involves a process of developing some skills that are required, some skills, some characters that are necessary. Once it is such a process, that's education. But a person can go through school and not engage or submit to a process of developing his mental capacity. That's why I say that school does not equal education. You could go through school and not be educated. Because the real thing there is not going through school and counting classes and being promoted or graduating. The real thing there is developing these qualities, developing these abilities so that, or so much so that you are able to perform. At the end of the day, the yardstick to measure an educated person or differentiate someone who is educated and someone who is not is performance, is to the degree or to the capacity that you're able to perform. That's it at the end of the day. That's education as a process. So education as a product is not the certificate that you get having gone through a course. Education as a product is that developed mindset, developed mentality that you have got as a result of going through a process. Education as a product is that attitude which you have developed as a result of going through a process. Education as a product is that skill, that developed skill, not gift this time, that you have developed as a result of going through a process. Education is that character trait or quality that you have developed as a result of going through a process. So you are a very highly educated person because of or as a result of the skills that you have. So you could look at somebody who didn't go to school but is highly skilled, exuding very high moral characters or traits. And you could say this man is highly educated. He doesn't need to have a PhD. He just needs to be able to exude certain characters, certain qualities that are desirable and required for progress of other human beings. That's education as a product. But does our educational system as we have it, especially the public one, does our public educational system gives this to us? Of course, the answer is very, very clear. The answer is very, very clear. And that means that there's a problem with our educational system. There's a problem with education as we have it. Something is wrong somewhere, and something needs to be done about it. Something is wrong, and something needs to be done about it. What's my proposition as to what needs to be done in regards to education as it were and education as we have it? My proposition is that we should take responsibility for our education. Talking to you now, take responsibility for your education. Take the responsibility to do for yourself what your nation should have done for you as a nation. Do for yourself what your country should have done for you education wise. You can't afford to see and perceive education like every other person. You need to take responsibility for your education. And so there are 5 key steps I propose to you to take responsibility for your education, and then we'll call it a wrap. Officially, we have 2 more minutes to go, but of course, we have network issues, so you could spare me 5 more minutes or even less so that we'll wrap this up, okay? So, how do you take responsibility for your education? How do you take responsibility for your education? The first step is that you should become aware of the reality of this situation, the reality that education, as it were, in our nation is not what it's supposed to be. There's something I usually say that it is really bad to be in a bad situation. But what's worse than being in a bad situation is when you are in a bad situation and you are not aware that you are in a bad situation. This is worse. Because he who is in a bad situation and is not even aware that he's in a bad situation will not even worry or bother to find way to improve the situation. So taking responsibility for your education begins with being aware of the reality of the situation. It bothers me to know how many aspiring university students, current university students, and even graduate students that are not aware of the of the situation that we're in. They are not aware that the education, quote unquote, as we have it and we perceive it currently, is not able to go to empower somebody to make a living. Whereas originally, education is supposed to do that. Education is supposed to bring out the best in you, refine potentials into skills. But that's not the reality. So you taking responsibility for your education begins with you being aware that this is what the situation is. Number two, you need to come to realize the truth that money, which is usually the end goal of education, as it were. I mean, many people, even up until today, are going to school. Why? To get a certificate. Why? So that they have more opportunities in the marketplace, in the job economy. Basically, that is. Why do you want to have a better job? Why do you want to have a better place? Why do you want to have better employment, quote unquote? It's so you have money, period. The end goal is the paper. The end goal is the green stuff, if we want to be true to ourselves. But then I'm saying that the second step for you taking responsibility for your education is realizing the truth that money is essentially a reward for value provided through the roles that you perform. Money is essentially a reward for value that is provided through the roles that you perform. I hope this is explanatory, but let me explain further just in case you don't understand. Money is a role. Money is what? A reward for value provided. Okay, so this couple of this, if you have this into 1 million pieces, you say that's a million. But this is in the hands of other people, but it will get to you as an exchange or as a reward because you provided value through some roles that you perform. So take this for instance. There's a practice I did with this. I was studying money a couple of years ago, how it comes, how people get it, and all that. So I did a test for myself. Every time I gave one of this out, sometimes not in this denomination, I would take record of why and how I gave that out. And so that day, the first place that made me give this thing out was something to eat. Um, so I needed to get food to eat. So I walked into a restaurant and I ordered for food to eat. And then they gave me, and after eating, I gave the person money. Money is essentially a reward for value provided through the roles performed. So I was provided value in terms of food, and the person is able to provide the value of food for me because she played the role of a cook. She played the role of a cook, and I paid her because I am either not able or willing to play that role for myself. I gave money. The second instance, the same day, was I I wanted to get from a particular point to another place so I could get to work, and I boarded a car. As I alighted, as I was about to alight from the vehicle, I removed another one and I gave to the person, and I took note of it. That was transportation. That was money being given as a reward for value. Value in that case is transportation, to be taken from a point to another. And that value was provided through a role performed. What role? Driving. And so I had to pay the driver, the performer of that role, because I was not willing or able to do that myself. I didn't have a car. For some, they have a car, they cannot drive. And so they get to employ, take note of these keywords, somebody who could play those roles so that the person plays the role for them and then they pay the person money in exchange. So the second key in you taking responsibility for your education is to come to that understanding and truth that money, the stuff, is just a reward for value provided, and that value is provided through playing certain roles. So education also, another thing you need to realize, still in the point two, is the development of those abilities to perform those roles. A person came, he couldn't drive. Now he went through a process to develop the skills and ability to drive so that he can be a driver, so that somebody can pay him for playing the role of driver in his or her life. Is that not clear? That's the basic form of finance. This is basic finance education. So, developing the required mindset, the attitude, the skill set to be able to perform A relevant role for certain organizations is the essence of education. It's about developing the capacity to perform roles. It's about performance of roles. I really wish our educational system have it that way, such that we're able to focus on performing roles, focus on, even when we're doing assessment, what we call exams, we are assessing your capacity to perform a role. We are measuring you by your capacity to perform roles and not by your ability to regurgitate facts. Third step in you taking responsibility for your education. So you need to now determine, having understood that money is but a reward for value provided through performing roles. And therefore, life is about being able to efficiently perform roles. Somebody he says he's a doctor, someone says he's a barrister, someone says he's an engineer. All those words are about roles. I'm a manager, I'm a director, whatever it is you say you are, it's just the role that you are playing for time in life. But of course, that person that said he was a doctor, a surgeon, was not born a surgeon. The dentist was not born a dentist. He went through a process to acquire the knowledge, the ability, the capacity, the skill set to be able to do the work of a dentist and play the role of a dentist. That's why we call him a dentist, and that's why he's being paid for that. So the third step in taking responsibility for your education is you deciding what role do you want to perform and in what sphere you want to perform that role. What role do you want to perform and in what sphere do you want to perform that role? That is a question you need to ask yourself. Another question you need to ask yourself in the same point number 3, is that what are the required attitude, the required skill set, the required knowledge, the required character qualities, the required abilities to perform this role? Because any role you choose, there are abilities there. If you choose to want to play the role of a doctor, you need to have knowledge and ability to understand anatomy. That's a requirement right there. So my saying here is know the role you want to play and know what it takes, what it's required to play that role efficiently. I'll give you a more practical example. For you to play the role of a lawyer or a barrister or even a doctor, one of the required character traits is attention to details. I've never seen any of these professionals that lack that trait of attention to details. So the point here is you know what role you want to play, but you're also able to know what are the things required, because there must be character traits required. There must be skill set required. The fourth, before the final step in you taking responsibility for your education, is you asking yourself, what is the most efficient institution? What is the most efficient institution through which you could acquire or develop the skills you've listed? This is how and why to go to school, actually. The way we go to school here in this part of the world is just haphazard, but it is supposed to be that. First of all, you determine the end from the beginning and what is required, what it is you want to get. Here now, you are deciding where it is you're going to get it at best. So if you know that you have decided that it's in the field of medicine and health, you want to play some valuable roles. You want to bring value in that area, playing the role of a medical doctor or some sort of such. You need to now know that you cannot develop the mindset, attitude, and skill set required to play that role. You can't do it sitting in your bedroom reading books alone. You need to know that in that particular role, you need to be properly certified, properly and professionally trained. So you ask yourself, what is the best institution, organization, system, individual, platform through which you could develop these things? Finally, as you Find your way into such platforms, network, organizations, institutions. Set it as a goal. Don't go there for going sake. Go there with a goal that looks like, at the end of XYZ, I would be able to XYZ. I should be able to perform XYZ role. That's the final point. Don't go to school like every other person. Go to school purposefully. Go to school intentionally. Go to school with the intent that at this at this specific time you are able to do XYZ. Ladies and gentlemen, these are 5 key steps that I propose to take responsibility for your education. As bad as our educational system were, if we're able to successfully apply these 5 different steps, we'll be able to ameliorate the educational situation and make the best of it. I hope that in this short 30 minutes, 35 minutes session, we have been able to understand what education is not, how much that the lack of understanding of what education really is bothers all of us, the employer, the employee, the lecturers, the students. I hope we have understood how it affects us. I hope we also came to the understanding that every lapses we find in the school setting or the educational sphere is as a result of not understanding the true meaning and the essence of education. We understood that education is not schooling, it's not graduation, it's not any of all these things, but that it is the development of required traits so that we're able to perform roles and provide value. It's about ability to perform. And therefore, education should be judged and evaluated by our ability to perform. You say you're a doctor, can you do the medical procedures? Okay, so we're also able to talk about how to take responsibilities for your education. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fantastic time with you. We'll come again your way next week with some amazing subject matters. These things are building upon. Maybe after the subject of next week, we can now start talking about the hows. How do you, read and easily understand what you read, remember what you read, do assignment, prepare for exams. We have so many hows. But let's trash the motivational issues, the why issues. I hope to come your way again same time next week. This is David Obinna here, and it was my pleasure. I'll see you guys.